Hello everyone, and I wish you a wonderful and peaceful day. Today, we're going to explore a simple yet meaningful journey. From the early morning in a quiet garden, to a hard-working day at the market, and back home to moments of love, hope, and shared dreams. You'll follow Dee as she renovates the garden, buys pomelos to sell, faces moments of worry at the market, and ends the day planting seeds for a better future together with Huyen. It's a story about hard work, perseverance, and finding happiness in ordinary days. If you enjoy this kind of real-life story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our upcoming videos. The morning sunlight poured into the garden, still veiled with a touch of mist, gentle and serene. As if waking everything from a long slumber, Dee stood in the middle of the open plot, hands on her hips, taking a deep breath. She smiled directly at the camera, her warm voice delivering the familiar greeting, sending wishes of peace and joy to everyone for a new day. Today was a rare day off, and Dee knew she didn't want to let the time slip away meaninglessly. The weather this season was kind, no heavy rain, no flooding, the soil just moist and soft enough. In her mind, she pictured the garden transformed into neat rows, lush with young greens and vegetables growing day by day. She thought of Huyen, of the days leading up to Tet, when they'd bring their produce to the market, sell it at a good price, and have a little extra to get by. Every seed she was about to sow today was a small hope for the future. Dee bent down to pull a few weeds, feeling the familiar scent of damp earth. Though she knew the work ahead wouldn't be easy, with the sun and wind draining her strength, a strange lightness filled her heart. She believed that every drop of sweat shed today would one day turn into tomorrow's joy. This garden wasn't just soil and plants. It was the shared dream of two people striving day by day. Dee rolled up her sleeves, ready to begin, her steps steadier with the clarity of her faith. Leaving their garden, Dee made her way to the pomelo orchard of the familiar old man. The whole garden was a vibrant green, with plump pomelos swaying on the branches, sparking her excitement. The orchard's owner greeted her with a sun-tanned face and a kind smile. Dee greeted him politely, asking about this year's pomelo harvest. She asked permission to try one. A small knife glided through the thick rind, releasing an instant burst of sweet, cool fragrance. Tasting a segment, Dee nodded in satisfaction. The sweet, refreshing flavor would sell well. She listened attentively as the old man shared his wisdom. Pomelos needed their skin to slightly wilt for the sweetness to deepen and the fragrance to intensify. His slow words carried a lifetime of tending the orchard. Dee carefully selected large, evenly golden pomelos, cutting them with borrowed shears, keeping the stems long as he'd advised. 30 heavy pomelos were neatly arranged. She paid him clearly and thanked him with heartfelt sincerity. When he helped lift the load onto her shoulder pole, Dee smiled and said she was used to it, even as sweat beaded on her forehead. Stepping out of the orchard, she carried a clear sense of confidence. These pomelos would turn into money for seeds, the first step toward a new harvest. The market was growing lively, the sounds of buying and selling blending with the hum of vehicles in the familiar rhythm of life. Dee set down her load of pomelos, paid for her spot, and called out in her warm, clear voice, "Sweet pomelos here!" She invited passers-by to try, deftly peeling the rind to reveal the white, fragrant segments. At first, people only glanced and walked on, no one stopping to buy. A pang of worry hit Dee, the fear of losing money flashing briefly. Sweat soaked her back. The sun beat down harshly, but she kept her smile and patiently called out, trusting the quality of the morning-picked pomelos. Then someone stopped, tasted, nodded in approval, and bought a few. Then another and another. The load dwindled. The anxiety in melted away, replaced by quiet relief and joy. When the last pomelo was sold, she let out a breath, the profit exactly as she'd hoped, enough to buy seeds. Dee wiped her sweat, looking at the empty load with a warm heart. Today, she had overcome her own fear of failure. Returning home, Day stepped into the yard with a tired but radiant face. Huyen was out in the garden, hoe in hand, clothes streaked with dirt. They looked at each other, smiles blooming naturally like the afternoon sunlight. Dee recounted the day's sales, from her initial worry to selling out completely. Huyen laughed, teasing that Day had finished so quickly without waiting for her. They sat down to rest, eating bon chung to save time. One pomelo was set aside for Maya. Its sweet, cool taste melted on their tongues, chasing away fatigue. They talked about the large garden, about not letting the land lie fallow. Huyen divided it into 10 rows, each for a different vegetable to have a variety for Tet. Dee excitedly shared about the seeds she'd bought: beans, scallions, greens. Before them was the prepared plot, full of promise. That moment was simple, yet profound. Two people sitting side by side, sharing the fruits of a day's labor, sketching a future with the most ordinary plans. Huyen stood first, hoeing the still hard patches of soil. Each firm strike loosened the earth, softening it under the gentler afternoon sun. Dee brought over the seed packets, and without needing many words, they worked in sync, as if they'd done this forever. They started with the scallion row, sowing seeds evenly, then moved to water spinach, greens, carrots, and dill. They carefully placed each seed, covering it lightly, spacing them just right. She asked a few questions, and Huyen explained while working. Sow sparingly for strong plants, fine soil for quick sprouting. Sweat ran down their backs, but neither complained. They shared lessons from past seasons, which crops sold well for Tet, which were easy to care for, less prone to pests. Their faith in the coming harvest shone in every motion. Dee stood back to admire the finished scallion row, her heart full of hope. Huyen looked at the soil, nodded in satisfaction, and said they could sow carrots next. Work flowed steadily, unhurried but relentless. The garden transformed from bare earth to neat, orderly rows. Dee felt a deep peace in working alongside someone for a shared goal. When they moved to the bean row, they paused to rest. The afternoon light was softer, illuminating their dirt-streaked but lively faces. They'd just finished sowing dwarf beans, the kind that didn't need trellises, but yielded well. Day laughed, joking about whether Huyen would still care for her this much after they married. Huyen laughed loudly, saying things would stay the same, but Dee slowed, voicing a worry she'd often heard. Love is sweet at first, but marriage changes things. Her voice was softer, a little shy. Huyen looked at her seriously, saying sweetness took effort from both, or they'd be punished. The words made them both laugh, dispelling the brief heaviness. In the wide garden, they spoke of love simply, without grand promises. Dee realized her feelings ran deeper than initial sparks. It was trust built in facing ordinary days together. Huyen handed to her hat, a small gesture that made her feel protected. They stood and resumed work, their hearts lighter. The slanting afternoon shadows seemed to linger, holding on to this intimate moment a little longer. As the sun began to set behind the trees, their work neared completion. Many rows were planted, the soil neatly mounded. Diep and Huyen gathered their tools, putting away hoes and shovels, coiling extension cords, and bringing the fully charged solar lamps inside. They looked back at the garden and smiled at each other. A long, tiring, but fulfilling day. Diep whispered a wish for the crops to grow quickly, to sell soon at the market. Huyen nodded, adding that they should register for proper electricity, borrowing the landowner's papers to install their own meter and stop relying on others. The solar lamps twinkled in the twilight, promising brighter evenings ahead. Diep asked Huyen to take her to pick up Maya, admitting she was still scared to drive the motorbike. Huyen smiled, promising to teach her little by little when they had time. They stepped out of the garden, their shadows stretching long on the familiar dirt path. In their hearts was the warmth of a home waiting, a simple dinner, and tomorrow's continuation. Diep held Huyen's hand for a moment, saying nothing. She understood that happiness wasn't something grand. It was these days of working together, tiring together, and hoping together. Behind them, the garden stood quiet in the evening breeze, as if witnessing and safeguarding the dreams slowly taking shape. This story follows Diep through a simple yet meaningful working day. In the early morning, she decides to renovate the garden in preparation for a new vegetable season. To earn money for seeds, Diep visits an elderly man's orchard to buy pomelos and carries them to the market. Although she feels anxious at first when customers hesitate, her patience pays off and she sells everything. Returning home, Diep shares the result with Huyen, and together they plan their garden for the upcoming Lunar New Year. Side by side, they plant the first seeds and have heartfelt conversations about love and the future. As the day ends, the garden has changed, not only with fresh beds of soil, but also with strengthened trust, shared effort, and quiet hope for a better life ahead.